Welcome. It is Monday, November 2nd, at least in India. And this is the November session of the Storytelling by and for Adults series. And we are very honored that our first storyteller is Jeff Gere in Hawaii, who is up in the middle of the night to be with us. So thank you very much, Jeff, and please take the stage.
Well, I'm going to ask you all to push the speaker view so that my face is prominent because I'd like to talk to you. My wife says I'm too loud, and it's the middle of the night, and she said, so I'm going to tell you a story as if I'm talking to you very personally, quietly. I'm talking to you from Honolulu. That's where I live. And for 30 years, I was the drama specialist for the city and county of Honolulu, for the Parks Department. But I get bored easily, so I don't sit around in an office like many workers for the city and county. So I started going out to senior centers and talking to the seniors. And if you're ever spend any time with seniors, the best thing you can do is talk a little bit, smile a little bit, and walk around and shake hands. Because those seniors have all the stories. And if you're lucky, they'll give you one. Here's the one that I have for you tonight. I was in Waimanalo, which is a Hawaiian community, Alolike Native Hawaiian Meal Site Program. They give great food, and I always get friends. Turn off your speaker, turn off your microphone, whoever that is. I can hear a child. Thank you. Well, I'm walking around. Hi. There he is. Looked like a bag that was all crumpled. Fu Manchu, white hair all pulled back. Get 2 chairs. What? Get 2 chairs. Meet me out by the Kamani nut tree. I take 2 chairs. I sit outside. He goes, okay, I'm going to tell you stories. He told me 7 stories. For an hour and a half, I sat outside with this old man just telling me stories. And he'd always say, now tell it back. Somewhere in the middle of that hour and a half, I said, how come you're telling me the stories? I try to tell my kids, and they say, wait for the commercial. I got soccer practice, wait later. I try to tell my kids, they say, oh, I already heard that. I'm gonna die. But if I tell you the story, maybe they go on. But you gotta tell them right. I say, okay. Now, of the 7 stories, I don't have time to tell you the ones I remember, which are only 3. So of the 3 I remember, I'm going to tell you one story. All of you who are listening, please go like this. Uh-huh. Good. He said, I grew up in Hilo. Hilo is on the big island. I live on Oahu. It's another island. Little town. Hey, I got out of high school, 18 years old, never had a job. My uncle got me a job. He says, money for nothing, money for nothing. It took me a while to understand what was the job that he got. What he was the night guard at a compound, a fenced-in area where they put kids who were almost in prison or kids that had to work off some problems. They were out there in the middle of nowhere to make trails and help cut down trees and make, forestry out in nature. They called it the CC Camp, Conservation Corps Camp. And it was basically for kids, teenagers, work them hard, almost jail. And his job was to sit in a little booth from midnight to 8 o'clock, middle of the night when they all slept. Money for nothing. Things were good for 2 weeks. Full moon, big moon. I'm in my little house, the guard shack. Hey, Even those guys, there was all kinds of houses for the kids to sleep in. There was a giant bathroom and a place where they had the food. Every night they would make the food for me. All I got to do is heat them up and eat them. Money for nothing.
ದುಡ್ಡು.
Turn off your microphone. I hear a little boy. And it's not me. But one night things got a little weird. I was in the house. I was in my little hallway. I was listening to the radio, waiting for food. And I hear, oh, I turn off the radio. Someone's singing Hawaiian music. Oh, the guy can sing. Got a good voice. Oh, that's good. That's good music. Oh, it's 3 a.m. Oh, I gotta shut the guy up. He walked through the sleeping compound till he came to the bathroom. You know how you sing in the bathroom because you get the echoes? Yeah? He went to the bathroom, and inside of the bathroom, he could hear, the guy was singing. Oh, that's good music. Oh, I gotta shut the guy up. He opens the door, turns on the light. The music stops. For the next 2 hours, I went and walk inside, all around the sinks, all around the showers, all around the latrines, outside of the bathroom, inside the bathroom, outside the bathroom, inside the bathroom, all around the, nobody there. That's weird. The next night, I feeling a little oogy, a little freaked out. Time come for me to eat. I go to the big mess hall. I walk in the door, walk past all the tables. There's like a window for serving the food, right? But I go in the side door. There it is. The stove is as big as a plate, big like a desk. Turn on the burner, take off the plate. There's the food. Just got to heat them up. The drawer. Oh. Mouse. Oh. All the drawers start coming. The drawers is coming out, and the forks and knives. The forks is jumping out of the drawer. And the plates on top of all the shelves, the plates is shaking, and the cups is coming off. The plates is jumping off the plate. Then the plate, the forks, and the knives. I finally get a plate. I scoop off the food onto the plate as one knife comes by my head. I'm moving by the back door as a fork and a plate and a knife and a plate, and I'm walking out. I go out the door, and from the inside of the room, the back room, a plate come and skip off the table and chase me out the door. That's not natural. But the third night, I come to work. I freaked out. I bring my own dinner. Late in the night, I'm eating my dinner, and I hear it. Oh. Dog. We ain't got no dogs up here. A whole lot of dogs. Where did the dog go? His heart is pounding, his eyes bugging out. He walks across the compound. He comes to one of the houses where the boys are sleeping. They've got him on 3 decks. He says, from inside of the sleeping house, he can hear the dogs. He pushes on the door. He turns on the light. He can see the moonlight coming in. There are 12 boys. He turns on the light. The boys, they all fall down on the ground. Hey, you guys, get up, get up, get up, get. The man told me, you ever try and pick up one 18-year-old, 300-pound guy, try pick him up and put him up on the top shelf for sleep. Get up, get up. They don't wake up. They don't wake up. Too much, too much. I go back to my little house. I put all my stuff in the bag. I go in my truck back down the hill. In the morning when the sun come up, I by my uncle's door. My uncle come to work. He go, hey, how's it? I say, not too good. What's wrong? That job. You can take that job and stick it you know where. And my uncle go, kind of weird, huh? The old man that told me this story said that a couple of weeks later they had a party. The family gets together. The uncle came with a map of the whole area, rolled it out, put stones so you could see the map. He says, look, here's the line. It goes into the CC camp, goes past the cafeteria, past the bathroom, past the sleeping hall, the little house where the boys were dogs. Look, chicken scratch. Look at the key. I look at the key and the little chicken scratch. It says Menahuni Trail. You say that, Menahuni. The Menahuni are the mythical first people. When the Polynesians first came to Hawaii, they said that there were tiny little leprechauns, 3 feet people, 3 feet wide, incredibly powerful. They only ate vegetables. And the first Polynesians thought that was an aberration, and they tried to murder them, decimate them, genocide. So that the Menahuni became mythical. They went into the mountains and their powers went with them. But still there's little stories about how the Menahuni come down into the islands and mess around with things. So the uncle looked at the boy, the man, the old man telling me the story and said, see, it was just the Menahuni playing tricks on you. And then the old man looked at me and said, tell the story back. And the story that he told to me, I just told to you.
Well, thank you very much. I think we're
I hope I didn't wake up my wife.
well, no, I think we all want to thank your wife for suggesting that you tell it quietly. But of course, no matter what you do, Jeff, it comes out loud, even if you whisper. Or parts of
There's
it.
two sides to each coin. It's a blessing and a curse.
But because you did much of it soft, there was a contrast between the parts where the volume was low and the volume was high, and I think that's great. It's great that you have that. You're developing that contrast.
Thank you. I think.
Yes, absolutely.
So, does anybody want to say anything, or what do we do now?
I just want to also say you have a way of leaning into the camera, leaning towards the camera, where it feels you're going to end up on my lap. And that's both delightful and a little scary. But
Well, I'm trying. I actually, when I hit it at full speed, I'm on a bench so that I can slide back,
uh-huh.
back, and then move up and
Yeah,
move
well,
back.
everyone, you should know Jeff's a professional performer and works with puppets a lot. And you see, he has a curtain there and he has professional
Yeah.
lighting. He's not kidding around.
Oh well, I'm doing a show for my friends in India, and I'm up in the middle of the night trying to make it worth it, and I'm trying to be quiet, and I'm trying to move my face in real. Just a minute.
Yeah, we're reading you loud and clear. That was a very striking moment when the character of the man who was telling you the story laughed near the end.
You know, I wish I could say that I do that every show, but I just kind of play it by ear all the time.
Pandya Rajan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, he has set the backdrop. It's a very dark backdrop. Yes, that was wonderful to the story.
Just a black backdrop?
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
That was good for the story.
Well, that's drama.
Also, I've been playing with trying to get Zoom to be crystal clear because I don't want to spend a lot of money. So look, I have just a really cheap clamp light, and you can move it in and move it around and move it like this. And the other light is just a common LED, plugs into the wall.
Yeah,
And I just put it so it gives you some side fill,
yeah.
and you can change it around.
Well, these are things that a professional performer learns about over the years.
It's little tricks.
Mhm.
I don't have a cat that can sit on my table, so I have to, do the best I can.
Anyone
Yeah,
else?
it's
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And to add to the black background is your terrific red shirt with the black motifs that adds to the beauty of your narration. And the lights on you, I'm telling you, it was beautiful. The
I keep
effect of your
telling-
coming closer.
it's a show. And I think when you
Yes.
really do a production for people who have given you the gift of their attention, you want to complement that by giving them the best you have. I don't think that this is, you don't want to look at my living room. You want to go to another world. You want to go to Hawaii. And if I don't have a outfit that makes you think of Hawaii, if I don't go to the care and trouble, I even shaved. That's how much I care about you. It's a show.
Mm-hmm.
And I take it seriously. Sometimes Eric and I have had discussions because I think that the visual side of it matters a lot. And he's more like, well, I want the significance and the metaphor and the symbology. But I think you don't even get to that if you can't stand what it looks like and if you can't hear it. But that's just my opinion.
And one more thing is, like, not only you, your eyebrows, your hair, and everything was telling the story. So it was nice.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is it a laptop that you're using? The camera is so crystal clear.
That's because it's lit well. I've done lots of Zoom shows that weren't well lit, and the pixels, the amount of information that the little camera can get is diminished because you don't have high contrast between the lighting and the background. And so you can do a lot to improve the way you look on camera by giving yourself good lighting. Again, this is a side light over here
I'm
and
sorry.
a front light there.
You also have a very good connection, which is a tribute to the world of technology, because you're in Hawaii in the middle of the ocean. I don't know if your signal is going on undersea cables or by satellite, but
We are undersea cable, but I have nothing to do with that. I just pay my bill. I'm just trying to, we all use the tools that we have. And I'm only urging you, storytelling friends that you are. Wow, that sounds interesting. I'm delayed on somebody's speaker.
Yes.
To use lighting and to use staging so that it's a much more powerful presentation, more formal. Like me.
Okay. Well, we started a little
Oh,
bit
there's
late.
Barry.
Can I just say anything?
Go ahead, Barry.
Jeff, I'm fascinated by the mention of, I think you said the Menehune,
Yeah.
and just how I mean, I haven't done any study of it, but just how many cultures in the world have these mythical small creatures. And where I am in Georgia, and the little I know about the Cherokee, they talk about the Nunehi, which are the little creatures of the wood. And it's just,
Wow.
I think it's a universal theme.
Well, those are the European fairies.
Mhm.
It's funny because, you know, they're mythical, but I've met a woman whose family traditionally on one night every summer goes to a mountain valley and makes food for them. And she says she's always afraid of it, but that the family actually has every year for as long as she can remember, fed the Menehune, and they sing a song for them and then excuse them. And they have bowls that have been handed down for generations to generations and mats that they take out. And the Menehune roll out the mats and eat out of the bowls and then clean them out and pile up all the plates. This is like now. I mean, this is somebody who's living now on this island told me that that's what their family does. So they're not just mythical, they're actual in some, if you're plugged into that life form.
Well, we also want to ask the help from the little people regarding the election tomorrow. I'm sure they'll help us.
We're back to that.
All right, let's move on. And now, Ahn Sook, you're scheduled to go next, but I'm feeling we should let Barry come before you because Barry has a commitment where he has to leave soon. So is that okay, Ahn Sook, if we let Barry tell before you and then you tell after him? Okay, good. Okay, so we're beginning with the USA contingent. Jeff in California and now Barry in Atlanta. Barry, please introduce yourself and your story and take the stage.
Thank you very much, Eric. So hello, everyone. I'm Barry Stewart Mann. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. And the story that I'm going to tell today is a story that has kind of bubbled up over the past months with the things that have been going on in the United States. Chances are you have been aware of all the tumult in our society. And this is a story that at first I've told to people, but I've never told it as a story in performance. And at first I kind of hesitated because I thought that I realized that it really doesn't have a sympathetic protagonist, which we all know a story needs a sympathetic protagonist. And it also doesn't have a serious problem, a conflict, a dark night of the soul. And we know that a good story has that as well. But in thinking about it, I realized that in some ways the sympathetic protagonist is there, just never mentioned, kind of in the background of the story. And that in a way, instead of having that serious problem and conflict and drama and dark night of the soul, this story offers a kind of a counterpoint, a contrast in the chiaroscuro of dark and light, of black and white, of brown and pink. And I call the story Swagger. And though it deals with things that are very particular to the culture of the United States, I'm fairly confident that around the world you will be able to identify with, to recognize the themes and the situations in the story. Back in the 1990s, I lived in the city of San Diego, California. And I shared a house with another man, a roommate. I shared a house with a roommate, and we lived in a small 2-bedroom bungalow that was on a very nice residential street in a part of the city called North Park. It was a residential neighborhood formed by a grid of streets all lined with 2-bedroom bungalows with porches out front and mother-in-law units out back. It was 30th Street, 31st Street, 32nd Street. We were about 2 or 2.5 miles out of downtown San Diego, and our house was about 6 or 7 blocks from the major commercial district of North Park, where there were coffee shops and record stores and small groceries and so on. Now, one night in the winter, I realized that I needed something from the local drugstore, which was not really an apothecary or a pharmacy, but a rather almost a large department store, a super drugstore that we have in the United States. And since it was wintertime, I put on my black leather jacket and my black woven beanie cap that I was wearing during that season of my life to go because it was kind of late. And even though our neighborhood was relatively safe, this was a city. And so I also put on something else. I put on a bit of swagger. As I headed out into the night, I kind of hunched my shoulders back. I puffed out my arms a little bit as if there were biceps that needed room within the sleeves of my jacket. I lengthened my stride, so as I walked, my entire body was activated. Now, yo sé que me veo Latino. I know that I look Hispanic. And in that moment, I don't think I was trying to look in any particular way. It's interesting because the jacket and the hat that I was wearing were probably the same jacket and hat that I wore in a television commercial as an actor. I had been in a television commercial a year or two before for a company called the Viper Car Alarm Company. And in that commercial, I was seen trying to steal a car. A beautiful young woman had gotten out of the car and walked away, and I was hiding and came in to steal. In fact, it's still available on YouTube. If you look up Viper Car Alarm commercial, you will see a much younger version of me trying to steal a car. And that was probably the jacket and the hat that I was wearing. But I don't think that I was trying to, in putting on my swagger, to evoke a certain ethnicity. Although in retrospect, I think I probably was cast in that commercial because me veo Latino, because I kind of look Latin American, Mexican American. But I don't think I was trying to put on an ethnicity, but rather to put on a little bit of danger. Rather than appearing like a possible victim, I think I wanted to appear like a possible threat. And so I swaggered on down the 6 blocks to get to that the drugstore, and I bought what I needed, and then I started swaggering on home. Now, along the way in the dark night, I sensed something overhead. I felt a light sweep over me, and I heard the thwack, 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 thwack of a helicopter with a searchlight. Now, this was nothing unusual. San Diego is a very large city. It's a border city. It's a military city. It's a city with a lot of people coming and going, a lot of transients. And this happened from time to time. I continued walking, but then I heard, more pointedly, the sound of a siren. I felt headlights, a screeching car, headlights on me, 2 doors opened. Cops jumped out, a male out of one side, a female out of the other side, guns drawn. They pointed at me and said, "Stop where you are, drop the bag, put your hands up." And so I did. I dropped my bag, put my hands up. I wasn't really worried. I knew that whatever it was probably some kind of a misunderstanding. Something had happened, but they'd figure out that I wasn't part of it. They said, "Give us your ID. Where are you going? Who are you? What are you doing?" And so I calmly got out my ID, handed them my driver's license, explained who I was, just a simple actor, storyteller, teaching artist, going to the drugstore to get something. They started checking it. They asked me more questions. I wasn't worried. I knew this would all get sorted out within a matter of minutes. They said, "Put your hands on the car, spread your feet apart." And so I complied. I put my hands on the police car. I spread my feet apart. One of them patted me down. The other one had the flashlight on the driver's license, was radioing in with information, questions. They continued to ask me questions. I mused for a moment about what it would be like if they actually took me into the police station. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before. I thought that would be interesting. I would be kind of an experience. I wasn't worried. I wasn't concerned. I had people in the city of San Diego who could vouch for me. I had been living there a few years. I knew people in the cultural institutions of the city, people at universities that could, vouch for me. I had a little bit of money in the bank if I needed bail, and I certainly had people in my life who had access to more money. It wasn't a concern. They continued, one of them asking me questions, the other one looking at the license, radioing in questions, until finally they said, "All right, Mr. Mann, you can stand up." I stood up. We talked a little bit more, and finally they said, "Thank you, Mr. Mann," handed me my license back. Said, "We're sorry to have caused you such inconvenience, but there's someone, you fit the description of a suspect that broke into an electronics store on University Avenue. We're sorry for the inconvenience. Have a good night." And so I sauntered back home. And through it all, there was never any worry, never any concern, never any dark night of the soul. Just as there had been no worry or concern or dark night of the soul on an afternoon in Nevada, in the western part of the United States, in the middle of the desert, when a police officer pulled me over for speeding, no one around, but nothing to worry about. Just like there was no concern that afternoon when I was a young man and I had long hair and I was wearing a shirt I had made myself out of muslin and embroidered myself, and I had a scraggly beard, and I was walking with a big backpack up a hill in a small town in New Jersey in the eastern United States where I had grown up, and I was going to visit the parents of my childhood friend. And the police pulled over and stopped me and started questioning me, and even called to my friend's parents to make sure that I was legitimate. And just like there was no worry that day that I was driving from Palm Beach, Florida, a very fancy, posh community, across the bridge into the more working class West Palm Beach, Florida, and I was pulled over by the police for speeding. My wife to this day is convinced that that was probably racial profiling, that I looked Hispanic and that they were suspicious of that. But in none of those situations was there any worry, any concern, any danger or drama or dark night of the soul. And that is my privilege. Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you, everyone. I'd love to hear what people think, just because this is a new story. And of course, if you have any questions, there's a lot going on in the United States now with racial reckoning and with how police treat people and different people and people of color and so on.
Jeff, go
I
ahead.
love the last line.
That is my privilege.
Yeah.
Well, that's really the key. And I'm still amazed, and Jeff, you might be as well, that there are people in this country who, white people, Caucasian people, European Americans, who say there's no such thing as white privilege in our country. There's no such thing, Black people, people of color, Hispanics, Asian Americans have the same rights. No one, we're past that. And I'm reminded of it every day, and certainly in that chain of situations.
We should give the background to people who are not following USA cultural news that there has been a lot of protest. It's come to a head during the pandemic time because there's been economic suffering and also racial tension. One particular individual, African-American individual, was killed by the police some months ago, which led to a lot of protests, and this movement, Black Lives Matter, has developed. So it's it is a thing very much on the minds of USA people now. And there's been a whole practice of racial profiling, of stopping African American or dark-skinned people and searching them. See, my friends, we would be nervous because my friends would usually be carrying marijuana or something.
And in our country, and Jeff and Eric, you'd probably agree, and others who are familiar, a lot of this, traces back in very apparent ways to our country's legacy of slavery, and then to institutionalized segregation after the end of the Civil War in the 1860s and through the early 20th century. And there was a situation in my state of Georgia a number of months ago where an African-American man was out running, and a couple of Caucasian men basically deputized themselves to stop him, to question him, and then to, when he resisted, to kill him. And it's, they weren't arrested for a long time. And part of that is because there are laws on the books that deputize, that say that you can make a citizen's arrest, that if you think someone's doing something wrong, you can arrest them. And if they resist you, you can stand your ground. And that traces back to slaveholders trying to maintain their slaves, and to people trying to catch escaped slaves, and so on. So the past is very much present. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't see it. And the current administration is really trying to clamp down on it, and to question the right of protesters to protest, and to use extreme governmental force to suppress it, and so on. And I can keep going for another hour with that, but I'll stop it there.
Yeah, I was curious about something that you said. So the collective sort of denial, in a sense, of the white man privilege that you were talking about. Is this, would you say that this is sort of increased in the last couple of years, or has it always been something that has been sort of churning, and I think it's found expression in the last couple of years?
I would say probably has been given more license to express itself, that there are people who have become more brazen about expressing that. And we've seen that in the fact that many of our leaders, and especially the president and the attorney general, do not come out very vociferously and clearly opposing it. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, from a distance here where I live in India, I still follow USA News. I would say two factors have contributed to it becoming more on people's minds. Number one, income inequality and housing inequality and education inequality has only increased, even through the years of when Obama was president. It's only increased, and this has caused a great deal of tension. And also now mobile telephones, it's so common that people record video on their mobile phones and often catch people in the act of doing things. So these are two factors which have helped to bring it into prominence.
Yep.
So I found it interesting as a story in the way that your character used a swagger as a defense. It was using an offense as a defense, pretending to be tough as a way of defending yourself, but then that had unintended consequences of perhaps projecting the image that you were, the kind of person that the police would want to stop.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, everybody, I've made the mistake of, I haven't made the settings properly. It should be that when people first come into this YouTube room, they are muted automatically, but that's not happening. When people first come in, their mic is on. So some of them are just saying, hello, I'm here. So I apologize to the storytellers. I'm myself and Pandya Rajan are muting them as soon as we possibly can when they first come in. So if you hear a word or two, just ignore it and keep going. Yes, Pandya Rajan, you have to turn your mic on. No, you're on mute.
Mike.
You got to turn your mic on, Pandya.
Mike.
There you go.
Barry, I enjoyed your narration, because earlier when you were narrating a story that your family was riding on, probably it was a horse, right? In your tour a couple of months back. Huh? Pardon?
It was a donkey.
Oh, donkey, yeah, donkey. I think many people were sitting on the donkey and going, it was a funny narration, and at that time your way of telling was totally different. Now this is a subject that you have taken now. It's a serious subject, and your presentation is more into the description rather than the events. Whereas in that story, the number of events were piling and it was moving fast. So the way of telling was really wonderful. It was totally different story. So each story has told a different. Oh, that is wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Barry, you did a rather daring thing dramatically in that the first story, of your swaggering and getting stopped and released, that seemed to be the story. But then you immediately went into one, another, and sometimes that causes fear and anxiety in an audience, because we think, oh no, I thought I knew the point and I thought I had a grasp on what it was, but here it goes. But you saved it because the additional stories were brief and it became clear that they were, reinforcing the point. So it totally worked, but I had a few moments of concern.
You're looking at the clock. Yeah.
Not the clock, but it's kind of hard to pay attention to an additional story when we feel we're getting one story.
Right.
But then I figured out what you were doing.
Thank you. Well, I didn't mean to cause that concern, but good. I'm glad it worked.
Well, it's good to cause dramatic tension in your audience members sometimes.
And everybody, I have to say that when I signed on to do this session this morning, I had no idea that I'd line up a whole bunch of work today. So I have to leave, as Eric said, in just a few minutes. I think I have 5 classes I'm teaching or
by Zoom?
All via Zoom, all right here.
Good for you.
Wow.
Okay, well then we'll thank you for attending.
Nice to see you, Barry.
Yeah, good to see everyone. I'll be signing off in a little bit.
Great. Okay. So now let's get back to our schedule. Our tellers now are Ahn Sook, then Mayor and Priya and Sahil and Nageswara. So now it's Korea and then 4 from India. Very good. Okay, Ahn Sook, are you ready?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Ahn Sook. Family name Kim. I was so much mesmerized. I almost forgot my story. And forgive me, I don't speak in English in daily basis, only to talk. This story, I use English. Can you hear me? My internet is okay?
Yes.
Okay? Okay. Today, I want to take you to 1,300 years ago, old Korea. Can I see my face? I can't see my face.
Well, you are having a connection issue a little bit because your image is like we see an image of your face and it lasts for 3 seconds and then it changes. One option is for you to turn off your camera and just let us hear your voice. Maybe then your voice would be clearer. But how do you feel? Well, everybody, how does everyone feel? Are you getting audio okay, or do you think the audio would improve if she?
No, I don't want audio, but can you see my face? Is it okay? You can
Your
see
face,
my face.
We're getting like one image of your face every 3 seconds. We're not getting a constant video. We're getting a series of still images. But now it's speeding up. It's speeding up and slowing down. I think just go ahead. Just see how. Just proceed.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I just want to tell you a small kindness 1,300 years ago in Korea. Once there lived a monk called 정수 스님 in 황룡사, a great temple. Just it means golden dragon temple. And he was, the temple was great, but he was an ordinary, modest, celibate monk. And he, though he was not young, he never expected any special treat from young monks. He always volunteered to do some chores around the temple because the Buddhist temple was huge and so many people visited there. And one cold winter day, he volunteered to go on an errand to a temple across the city. But it was so cold and even the snow fell. So after he finished his errand, he hurried back to his temple. And he chose a shortcut through the pine tree woods. When he passed halfway through the trail, he heard a strange sound. It's like a kitten or a baby crying, very pitiful. So he looked around. Then he saw something under a tall pine tree, a beggar woman and newborn baby. The beggar woman was unconscious, holding the baby's navel string in her hands. The monk was embarrassed. Oh dear, poor thing. He hurried to cut the baby's navel string and picked the baby up and wrapped with his monk's gown, rubbed. Then the baby slowly moved and cried a little louder. So he laid the baby next to the mother. The problem was now the mother, the beggar woman, was barely covered with a ragged clothes, with the laboring baby, hunger, coldness. Just she was exhausted and fainted. What could he do as a celibate monk? There was no human being around there. If he leaves the woman there, she would surely be frozen to death the next morning. But he knew at the end of this trail, a hermit's cottage. If he could take them to that cottage, the mother and the baby would survive. So he shouted, "Woman, woman, wake up!" But no response. He shook her. Then he looked. His gown already wrapped the baby, but he still had undershirt and pants, 바지 저고리. He took them off and put them on the beggar woman and began to rub softly and breathe his warm breath over her face. He tried whatever he could do to warm her body. He hugged her. It took a long time. The sun was already setting. Finally, the woman opened her eyes. The monk was so happy to see this woman alive. He said, "Oh, woman, it's good. You are alive. Your baby saved your life." Then the woman said, "Where's my baby?" He showed her the baby next to her, sleeping the baby. Then the woman, just the tears rolled on her cheeks. "Thank you, 스님, thank you." The monk, 관세음보살, 나무아미타불, it's all thanks to 관세음보살. and he helped her to stand, and he picked up the baby in his arms, encouraged her to walk, and the wind howled and the road was dark, but they just step by step, they walked, and they arrived at the hermit's cottage. At the gate, the woman tried to return the monk's clothes, but the monk said, "No, no, you keep that clothes to get in." And the monk just turned around and ran as fast as he could to his temple. When he arrived at the temple, everybody was sleeping. It's quiet. He didn't want to bother the sleeping monks, but he didn't have any spare clothes. Old days, clothes are so rare, even in this big temple. So he sneaked into the back door of the kitchen. He didn't realize how cold he was, almost naked body. Then he relieved and found an old straw mat, wrapped his body, and laid himself on the floor near the furnace, expecting some warmth there, and chanting the sutra, Namo Amitabha Kwanseum Bosai, for the baby and mother. He was so happy. Just they now found a safe place. But at the same time, the king in the palace couldn't fall asleep. He was in deep thought. The next day, he had to announce the king's new monk counselor. In this country, the monk counselor was the most honorable job for a monk, and the monk counselor is a kind of king's spiritual advisor. So he had a long list of the name, but he couldn't decide. Then he heard a voice from heaven. Go to Hwangyongsa and find Jeongsu Snim. He will be your new counselor. He was surprised. He never had heard that name. And from the heaven, this name was called. So the next morning, the king sent a messenger to Hwangyongsa, and the messenger returned and reported to the king who the monk was and what the monk did the previous day. And the king was deeply moved by his compassion as a celibate monk. And he decided to appoint his new counselor with this monk. Usually, the king's counselor was from high noble family or even a monk from royal family. But this monk was from common people, not high rank monk. But he announced, okay, the monk Jeongsu will be my next counselor. Everybody in the temple was surprised at the news. But the monk Jeongsu became a great counselor for the king. He taught compassion for the poor to the king, especially in the most troubled time of the kingdom, with his own practice. And even he taught his monks community. Sometimes monk can break the rule to practice real compassion, mercy. And this story was unforgotten. His small kindness was unforgotten to Koreans' heart over 1,300 years. And especially this pandemic time, this monk's kindness resonated to my heart. And often I think of the monk and the beggar woman. Thank you.
Wonderful. So it was, the important thing was the intention of the monk, that he was having close physical contact with the lady, but he was not thinking of it sexually. He was not trying to take advantage of her. He was just helping her survive.
Yes, and he had only his robe and clothes, but he gave all to save the mother and baby, and he was naked and wrapped himself with a straw mat.
Yes.
And slept.
That's why we have the expression, I gave her the shirt off my back. It's an expression. You know, that is, there's another variation of that story, which I've known for a long time, and I'm sure many of us know, that there were two monks walking, and they came to a river. And there was a lady, a senior lady or just some lady who had to cross the river. So one of the monks picked her up and carried her across the river. And then when they got to the other side, he put her down, and the two monks continued walking. But after some time, one of the monks said to the monk who had carried the lady, why did you do that? How could you do that? You picked up a woman, you touched a woman. And the monk who had carried her said, I put her down 2 hours ago. Why are you still carrying her? So
in this story, I really wanted to focus. The beggar woman gave birth a newborn baby in the cold winter day in the forest. It's the lowest people. And if I pass by and I have only my clothes and nothing else, can I help them to take my clothes off and to save their lives? It just deeply touched my heart, his compassion, his mercy.
yes, she was in a very vulnerable position. Jeff.
I had trouble getting your love for the story out of the story. So I would invite you to work harder on the drama so that it's a more gripping story and not so much a historical report. I get more out of you talking about how it moved you later than I did when you were telling me the story. I didn't get it. I think it has to do with you talking at the same frequency. There's no, there's a dead mother with a child, and whoosh, what can I do to help her? I can give her the clothes on my back. I would rather be naked so those child will live. I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a very good story to do, but I don't know, that's your art, how to make it a gripping experience for the listener.
That's interesting feedback. It really is.
Thank you.
Ahn Sook, maybe later you'll watch and listen to the recording of your performance and listen again to Jeff's words, and maybe it'll be useful to you.
You can always say he's wrong.
Thank you.
And
Can
Jeff,
I say something?
this is an example of how audio is more important than video, because the audio it wasn't perfect, but it was good enough so that most of us could really understand it. but the video, Ahn Sook, as I said, it was often freezing, but it didn't matter. I even thought you should turn off your video altogether to possibly improve the sound quality. But anyway, anybody else? Did the story resonate with you in any way? Or any thoughts about it at all?
Yeah, I wanted to share. Actually, I had a different. So it's really beautiful because it reminded me of the stories that my grandmother used to tell me when I was a child, and you know, the way that you were sort of rating the story, it back to memories of my childhood. So when I was sitting and when I was listening to you narrate the story, I could almost feel that love and that presence of my grandmother, you know, in a certain sense. And so for me, that was, you know, that sort of resonated with me a lot. You know, that was the sort of, I know Jeff was, you know, sort of coming from, you know, from making it sort of gripping and, you know, dramatic in that sense. And I was thinking about it as you were saying it, and it was a different sort of, it was a different kind of drama that I was receiving, you know, within me, like in a certain sense. It was a different kind of sort of response that, you know, that had that very soothing effect, you know, and for me, that was what was really sort of special in that sense. So thank you. It was a wonderful story, and, you know, I felt really nice. So thank you for reminding me of my grandmother.
I also resonate with what Sahil just said. For me, the lack of drama in the voice, or because I was just listening to it and not watching her, it was on my headphones, so it was so soothing, and it was just told as if it was this happened, like a narration. There was no drama, so I was just expecting, okay, going very smooth, and the message was just laid out. So I also resonate with that. Yeah. And I think what Eric said, I've read it as a Ramakrishna story about you're still carrying the woman, I just dropped her. So that's also very beautiful. Thank you.
Sometimes it's good to give an introduction. Jeff, I'm thinking of what you said, that at first for a while you didn't know really why and how this was an important story to the storyteller, and why and how it should be important to us. So one option is to give a little introduction and you know, give a sense of why this story touched and moved the storyteller, and then we can be alert to know what to listen for. It's just one possibility.
I would like to say something, that it is often in many cultures that the common man, who is not really supposed to be among kings and queens, he gets the high position in the kingdom, and this is the kind of motif that you can see in many cultures throughout the world, and I've seen it in many stories that I read.
Okay, let us proceed to Mayor.
वीडियो नहीं था, मैं ऐसे अपना चेहरा दिखाई हूँ. वो ऑप्शन होता है टर्न ऑफ माय वीडियो वाइल जॉइनिंग करा.
What, I think somebody new joined, and I haven't had a chance to turn off that mic yet. Just a minute, I'm coming. Well, okay. Pandya Rajan, also you help me, okay? When new people come, they try to click off their mic real quick, but don't click off the storyteller by mistake, which is something that I've done.
Okay, Eric.
Okay. So Mayor, please introduce yourself and the story, and go ahead.
Sure. Hi everyone, good evening. I'm Gehi. I'm a storyteller from Mumbai, India. And I'm really happy and grateful to be here to be presenting to all of you from all around the world. So I'll jump right into my story, and maybe I'll tell you more about the story post the story. Hava nagila hava Nagila Hava, Nagila Venismeha. Hava, Nagila Hava, Nagila Hava, Nagila Venismeha. Hava Niranina, Hava Niranina, Hava Niranina Venismeha. Hava Niranina, Hava Niranina, Hava Niranina Venismeha. Who was this singing such a beautiful, happy tone? The king, disguised as a beggar, wondered. He was disguised as a beggar, wandering the streets of his kingdom to see and know how the people of his kingdom lived. He wanted to know if the people of his kingdom were really happy, because he certainly wasn't. Despite all the possible possessions, all the possible comforts, all the possible luxuries. He had just reached the outskirts of his kingdom, where the streets were really narrow and the houses looked as if they were just about to crumble. He entered a narrow lane following this tune of the person who was singing. It was a poor neighborhood indeed. And soon he reached this house from where he heard this song coming. And Hava Nagila, Hava Nagila. On knocking, a middle-aged, smiling man opened the door. And this beggar king said, I was drawn to your beautiful singing. May I come in? To which this man said, of course, a guest is a gift from God. Please come in. Would you like to have some soup and bread? The beggar king was amused and said, sure, why not? I could have some. But may I ask you something? What is it that was making you sing such a joyful tune? What makes you so happy in such appalling conditions? Oh, yes, I am very happy and grateful for all that I have. The beggar king looked around. There was a table, a chair, and a mat with a blanket. That's it. What was there to be so happy and grateful about? And then he asked, what do you do for a living? What work do you do? Here, take some soup. I'm a cobbler at the end of the road. I mend shoes for people. And that gives you enough money to survive? Oh, yes. Why not? Absolutely. All day I help people by mending, by fixing their shoes. Earn enough for the day. Come home, I cook, I eat, and I sing. The beggar king was now simply amused. How was that possible? And then he asked, and what about tomorrow? Don't you worry about your future? Why worry when something hasn't happened? Besides, I have faith that I will be taken care of. The beggar king smiled and said, oh, that's nice. Who do you think will take care of you? The king? I've heard he's really good to his citizens. Ah, yes, the king is really nice to his citizens. But for me, my Almighty takes care of me day by day. The beggar king was now simply stunned and shocked. This kind of faith, this kind of joy and happiness by owning such little, he wanted to get to the bottom of this. And so the next morning, he issued a proclamation that all cobblers must cease work immediately. No shoes to be mended or made for pay. Now, that evening, when the beggar king, once again, yeah, like I said, the king disguised as a beggar, walked towards this cobbler's house, he was 110% sure that he must have shaken the cobbler's faith. And he entered those narrow by lanes, and to his surprise, he heard, Hava, Nagila, Hava, Nagila, Hava, Nagila, Venismeha. Once again, the smiling cobbler opened the door, and the king was stunned to see his smile. He entered and said, I heard about the new decree today. How did you manage to earn your meal? My friend, I told you my God is great. He takes care of me each and every day. Today I couldn't mend shoes, so I joined some woodcutters in the forest. I cut some wood, sold them, and see, by God's grace, I have earned my meal. Take, have some. The beggar king was furious. He felt defeated at being unable to shake this cobbler's faith. So the next morning, he issued another proclamation. All woodcutters to be hired, to be recruited at the palace as guards. Now all these woodcutters were in the palace. They were given uniforms and they were armed with swords, but they would get paid only at the end of the month, that is after 30 days. That evening, the beggar king victoriously walked towards this cobbler's house, very sure that he has shattered the cobbler's faith. He entered the by lanes, and this time there was silence, stillness. He smirked and he was about to knock when Hava, Nagila Hava, Nagila Hava. Once again, this person opened with a beaming smile. May I come in? Oh yes, of course, come in, my friend. Would you like to have some soup and bread? Yeah, sure, I could. But I heard of the new decree today. How did you manage to earn your meal today? My friend, I told you my God is great. He takes care of me day by day. Today I marched all day in the king's palace, and then I was told that I would be paid at the end of the month. And that's when I knelt and I prayed to my God. I didn't know what to do. And when I opened my eyes, I saw the sword. I pulled it out from its sheath. It was indeed a fine blade. I went to the forest immediately, cut a branch, and made an identical blade of wood. I sold the king's blade in the market. And see, the money I've earned will last me for more than 30 days. The king now was raging with fury. How dare this cobbler do that? And he almost wanted to punish him then and there. But he controlled himself and said, and what if there's a sword inspection tomorrow? You could be executed. Have you thought about it? Aren't you afraid? My friend, I told you, why will I worry about something that hasn't happened? Besides, there's someone who takes care of me. The next morning, the captain of all the guards caught a random man from the marketplace and got him in front of this Jew cobbler and said, as per the king's orders, you need to chop off the head of this man. He is a thief. The Jew cobbler knelt and said, I cannot do that. I cannot hurt another human being. Please choose someone else. It is the king's orders that you must chop off his head, else your neck is on the line. The cobbler once again knelt and he prayed, and by then a huge crowd had gathered around the palace. He thought a little, he prayed a little, and then he got up and looked up at the heavens and said, Almighty, you see, I have been ordered to chop off the head of this man. You know, I have never even hurt a fly. Please give me a sign, be my witness. If you think this man is indeed guilty of the crime that he's accused of, give me the strength to take out my blade and chop off the head of this man. But if by any chance he's innocent, please turn my sword into wood. And with that, he flashed his sword right up in the air. The crowd that had gathered there gasped. Some even knelt and started praying at the miracle they had witnessed. The king, who was watching all this from his balcony, was amazed at the wisdom of this cobbler. He came down and he said, my dear friend. I am the guest whom you have welcomed each night so generously. Every time I tried to shatter and shake your faith, but you held strong. You chose faith, joy, and happiness in every situation. I would like to invite you to be my advisor and teach me how to live with faith, joy, happiness, and contentment. And that evening, the cobbler had his meals with the king in his palace. And this time, both of them sang together. You all may join me if you want. Hava, Nagila, Hava, Nagila, Hava, Nagila, Venus, Sneha, Hava, Niranina, Hava, Niranina, Hava, Niranina, Venus, Sneha, Hava, Niranina, Hava, Niranina, Hava, Niranina, Venus, Sneha. Thank you.
Okay. So that is a Jewish folktale?
Yes, that's a Jewish folktale called The Wooden Sword, and it's one of my favorites.
Wonderful.
I really like the message that comes out of this folktale. So, but I'm more than happy to receive feedback for improvements. How can we make this better? I'll be more than happy.
Well, I think you communicated the joy of life that the shoemaker had. You exuded that well, especially in the early part of the story.
Thank you, Eric.
And of course, that kind of joy is we use the word infectious. Infectious joy. So that was wonderful.
Yeah, so that was a Jewish folk song as well.
Yes, of course. Are you Jewish or part Jewish? No?
I'm much an Indian.
Because Mayor, sometimes Mayor is a Jewish name.
It's a Persian name at times, but it's also a Punjabi name.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yes.
I'm a very, my family's Jewish, but I'm not religious at all.
Okay.
My family came from Russia and Poland to New York 100 years ago, and now I've come to India. I've married a non-Jew, so our child is not even officially Jewish. In the Jewish religion, the mother has to be Jewish for the child to be considered Jewish.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Thanks for that detail, Eric. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it has that story has echoes of two religious stories in Judaism. One is the story of Job, where God wants to test somebody and takes away everything from that person, not just his job, but his family and his home, everything. I guess God God and the devil are arguing, and the devil says, will this person still love you even if you take away everything? And God says, of course he will. I'll take away everything and we'll prove it. So it's rough on Job. Job is the name of the man, but I think at the end everything is returned to Job. And then the other Jewish story reminded me of Abraham. God wants to test Abraham to see if Abraham will do whatever God says. So God tells Abraham to take his son up on a mountain and prepare to cut off his own son's head as a sacrifice to the God. And Abraham is about to do it. But at the last minute, God stops him and says, no, I didn't really mean it.
I'd like to add here that even in our Indian mythology, we have a story called Satya Harishchandra. It was a King Harishchandra whose story resonates or is very similar to both the stories that you've mentioned, both Job and Abraham's thing, because it's a mixture. They try to test and see if this king will ever go off the track of righteousness and ever lie, but he never does that. It comes to the verge of him having to chop off the head of his own wife, and that's when the gods relent and everybody agrees that he is a man of his word and honesty. So to this day, he is known for his honesty.
But in your story, Mayor, the king is really jealous that the shoemaker loves God so much and has such a good relationship with God. The king he can't stand it, right?
In fact, yeah, that's why he was very happy when he thought it was he himself who the cobbler thought is going to take care of him if he didn't have anything. But when he's competing with God. Yeah.
But to me, the key moment of the story is when the shoemaker pulls out his sword and it's wood. And the king knows it's a trick, right? The king knows this is no miracle. It's because the shoemaker sold the sword. So, but the king lets him get away with it, right? The king could have said, that sword is wood because you sold my sword yesterday. It's not because of anything else. But the king didn't do that. He decided this man is so clever, I want to have him on my side.
Right.
Excuse me?
Yes.
However, the happiness comes from within the heart. So whether it is a god or the king, the happiness cannot be stopped by anybody, poor or rich, whoever it is. It comes within. So nice. The story is very nice narrated. Especially the topic is happiness. Happiness quotient. Excellent.
You know,
don't bother living in the presence, not bothering about the future or the past. Happiness within the life, whatever the job he is doing. Excellent. So nice. Thank you.
A general theme of the stories this whole, the last few months has been conversations. It's not a mandatory topic, but I've encouraged people to use that. And so this story had the conversation, ongoing conversation between the shoemaker and the king.
You know, another thing that a theme that story brings up is adapting quickly to new circumstances, which is certainly current to the world we live in.
Very true.
Let me just point to one little thing. When I read the first time, there's 40 days the cobbler couldn't get paid. So I ignored that 40 days mean, but later I found it's quite religious meaning for 40 days. Eric, can you explain it to me?
40 days, it rained and flooded for 40 days when Noah was in the ark with all the animals, right? And then after 40 days, a bird came with a leaf from land. So that flood that was cleansing humanity of wickedness lasted 40 days.
Sorry, did you hear 40? Because I said 30 in my narration. Did I sound as 40?
I don't know.
Okay, then I need to.
No, I mean just from other version, I read that.
Okay, you read the other version. Got it.
And Mr. Eric, that example that you gave about Prophet Abraham, that is when Bakrid is celebrated or Eid al-Zuha is celebrated. In remembers to that sacrifice of Prophet Abraham, what he had done, sacrificing his own son.
He didn't do it, but he was ready to do it.
Yeah, he did it because it was replaced, the child was replaced with a goat, Bakra. That is why Bakrid Eid al-Zuha is celebrated. So thank you for that.
Pandian?
Yeah. Your way of telling the story was very simple, and you differentiated between the storyteller and the character, which always Eric emphasized. He says that the character, when they talk, you must differentiate. That you have perfectly followed it. And what was missing is every time we know that he is going to say yes. So every occasion we know pretty well that what is going to happen. The suspense was missing in this story. So that is the only thing. If there had been a suspense, it would have been, the story would have been more interesting.
Okay.
Well, I felt there was suspense, but in a sense there was not suspense because the character and the narrator was so joyful that we knew it was going to be a happy ending. And yes, Mayor, you did alternate between being a narrator and being the character, but especially in the early part, the joy in the shoemaker also affected the narrator. The narrator was expressing a similar joy as the narrator, and that often happens. Like the narrator will say, "And the boy was very scared." So he is being both the narrator then, and also the boy. So you did that with that the narrator was saying, and that shoemaker, he was so joyful. And he was, no matter what would happen, he had that faith. So it was both the narrator and the character in one at times, which often happens, and it's fine.
Okay. Thanks everyone for that feedback. I'll definitely work on, though I can't change the suspense because that's how the folk tale is.
No,
I don't know.
You can find a way. You can find a way. See,
okay, let me see that.
Yeah, Lara used to say that she used to work on a story for a year. Once she will take one story and work on that. So this is what you have to bring in as a storyteller. Yeah, that will make, yeah.
What suspense were you looking for, Pandya Rajan? That
I have to think. No, I only say there is no suspense. How to bring it is to be worked.
I have to think there was suspense because the king was getting more and more obsessive, and you could tell he was not going to let this go.
Yeah, you pointed out, Eric, you did a right thing. The king was jealous. That is, he is a villain actually.
Yeah.
That makes the story less interesting.
At a certain point, he gave it up when he let the shoemaker get away with his lie.
There lies the clue, Meher. Why the king is jealous?
Could I give a suggestion? Just a little one. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the suspense, all that I could think of right now, when this debate is happening, is that probably if she wouldn't have told us it was the king dressed as a beggar, and the story could have moved on, and it could be a surprise that she ultimately in the end tells that it was the king who was the beggar. That could be. Just that came to my mind.
Yeah, you are a quick thinker. Yeah.
Not exactly, it just happened.
Suspense could be built. We love to see characters change.
Yes.
We love this. So if you played up him, oh yeah, he's happy, huh? Oh, he solved it. Well, I'm gonna. Oh, he solved. Well, he's really happy.
Yeah.
But Jeff,
let him help. Can you help me be happy?
But Jeff, did you buy it? Jeff, did you buy it that the king suddenly went to, gave up his prosecution of this fellow, and when the fellow raised the wooden sword and said it's a miracle that God changed it to wood, that the king suddenly let him get away with it? Did you buy that the king converted to goodness at that point?
I think the king recognized that this was a really smart person who was well-founded. And my belief is that God loves a partner, and God loves a sharp acolyte, a believer who has a mind.
Yeah, not just God loves, but the king loves a partner.
And the king recognized that he could also.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
He could be happier with the help of that believer.
Very good. Okay. Shall we?
You know, it's 4 a.m. in the morning, and I find that as compelling as this is, if I would like to suggest that Eric reschedule the whole group come earlier in my evening.
Okay, well, we'll try. We'll do something.
Since that may not happen, I'm going to say, please forgive me for all the storytellers yet to come, but I really have to go to bed.
Maybe sometime we can move Hawaii into the Indian Ocean. Okay.
No, the story taught me that God can do all things, Eric.
Of course.
I have faith.
Don't work on it. Great.
I have a quick
Thank you all.
cosmetic feedback for you, Meher. Just a cosmetic
Sure.
feedback.
Sure,
The
Rama.
camera was covering your forehead.
Is
You were
it?
almost this close. So if only you were a little away, we could see your full face and when you lifted the hands. It was so close that a part of your forehead was almost cut in the video, what we could see you.
Is this
So where
better?
you are right now is
Hmm.
perfect. Just a cosmetic feedback.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very good. Okay, Priya, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Please introduce yourself and the story and go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Priya. I'm from India, Chennai. Okay. Yeah, I'm moving to the story. This in a village called Pothokudi village during this pandemic time. It shows really how as people, we have to share this world with all the living beings. Okay, now this story happened near Madurai, which Dr. Eric Miller really liked this place. Yeah, which had a gravitational pull. He had a gravitational pull towards South India. So far away from this, little bit far away from Madurai, there was a village called Puthukudi village. Usually in villages, the electricity board is operated by an individual person. No one is appointed for that to operate. So someone volunteers to switch on when the dusk comes, okay, and put it off during the morning time. And one such person was Karupu Raja. His name was Karupu Raja. He was 25 years old. Okay, so he volunteered to switch on and off the light every day because his house was just a stone throw away from the electricity board. Now, one evening, when he went near the electricity board, he saw something fluffy and feathery there. And when he looked nearby, he saw some scared, beady eyes looking at him from the fluffy material. Now, Kariparaja stopped for a second. He moved back. Now, if he have to put on the control light, now he has to pass through the fluffy material and switch on the lights. Then that will disturb the nest. And he didn't want to do that. He didn't have the heart to do that. Now, immediately he took his cell phone, took a picture of the nest, passed on to all the villages through WhatsApp. Now, he returned home without switching on the lights. Now, in Thothukudi village, there were 120 families living there, and there were 35 street lights. Now, it was not easy to convince all the people to stay in the dark during the night times. Now, though he sent through the WhatsApp, he went home by home, house by house, explaining people what he saw there. So he went every day. He went trying convincing people, tell them things. The people were not satisfied. Mainly the elders of the people, elders of that Pothokudi village asked him, why we have to sacrifice our night times for that small robin bird? No, the Karupu Raja had an answer for them. He said, when you were young, you saw so many birds in this village. Now, can we see all those birds here now? Yeah, those people answered, no, we cannot see. Those all kinds of birds are not seen now. Yeah, that is why. See, these birds have chosen our village because there's something special in our village. And that too, it has chosen this electricity board because something went to us. So let's not switch on the lights. Now, at last, he somehow convinced all the elder person. But then the problem was with the women of that village. They cannot step out of their home during the nights because the whole village looked pitch dark after 6 o'clock. So the women of that Pothukudi village have to stay back inside their home, cannot come out. But then it was all for the robin and its eggs. Then one day, Karupu Raja saw 3 blue colored eggs with brown spots on it. Now he thought, maybe the robin is all alone. The mother robin is all alone to hatch the eggs. So he did not switch on the lights. And for 35 nights, yes, for 35 nights, the whole village was under dark. Next, one day morning, when he heard the chatters of the robin, small robin chirping and here. Now the whole village was happy. Now he was able to see the birds there. And slowly Karupu Raja went, took the picture of that, passed on through all the village people there. And everyone was happy. Now the whole village has sacrificed. It's not only for sacrificing, you know, the children of that village learned few things from there, which their online classes did not teach them, which the teachers did not teach them. Every day they used to ask, Anna, Anna. Anna means brother in our language, in our native language. Okay, Anna, Anna, has the bird hatched? Anna, Anna, what is the bird doing? Anna, Anna, what is the bird eating? Yeah. So all the questions all the children of the village had for Karupu Raja. Now, then the mother bird started feeding the little birds, and slowly after 2 days, the birds flew away. Now, after 35 days, the Karupu Raja was able to operate the control switches of the electricity board. Now, Karupu Raja also learned something in this meantime. He learned that the birds does not like to get wet in the water. So that was also a learning thing for Karupu Raja. And then the people of the villages also learned that this is a world place where it has to be shared by every living creature throughout this area. That's it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So, Priya, what about that story especially spoke to you? Why do you really, what in that story do you especially like?
Especially I like to see for the robin, for the robin, the whole village sacrificed the light because see, they did not have street lights. It's a small village. Without the street lights, the whole village would go into dark. And that's where the people sacrificed. See, it's these days in the cities, we don't care about other living. We just cut off the trees, we just cut off and we live according to just only for our pleasure. But the whole village sacrificed all their evenings, 35 evenings, just for these 3 robins. So that is something I felt really great, that this has really happened, and the MLA of that village, the resident, they came and they all wished this Karupu Raja for doing such a wonderful thing. How this also took Karupu Raja, it's not only his work, it also took Karupu Raja to go get into each house and say that, oh no, see, this is what we have to save these all birds. See, he has to convince so many people. It was not an easy task. It was kind of a social work which he has to do other than doing his own work.
It was interesting that the story involved the electricity board. So that was a modern element. So then we knew it was not an old folk tale because it had an electricity board.
Yes, it came on the news, and it came on the newspaper also about this Karupu Raja. He's a young chap, he's just 25 years old, but then he involved in doing this.
Anyone else? Any thoughts?
No, I was just wondering, where had the bird laid its eggs? Had it laid it very close to the switch that he just couldn't go and switch it on?
Yeah,
or was
that's what I told. He has to cross this fluffy material to switch on the switch.
So it was inside a room near the switch?
No, it's an electricity board is a small board, small kind of a box. Yeah.
Okay.
So electricity box is usually a small kind of box in the villages wherein they open and just switch on the lights, and next day morning they switch off the lights.
Oh, so this one had laid it inside the box itself, is it?
Yeah,
Oh,
laid it inside the box.
Okay, now I get it. I mean, you hadn't described it, no? So I was trying to imagine, was it a room? Because when you say electricity board, I tend to imagine like
electricity board in India is very small.
Oh, okay, right. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, it's a nice story. Maybe a little bit of more dramatization could have been added and more of explanation could have been added to make it, make the audience feel more. That is what is my feedback.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know. I think sometimes it's not a good idea to insist that a story is important. I think the key is to just tell it in a way that the listeners can really visualize it and feel it, and which I think happened here. I don't think we need to always be trying to convince our listeners, this is important, listen to me. That's like using too much energy to try to sell it. But there are different styles. I think video conferencing is a very intimate situation because you're talking to people close up to their faces and they're in their office, in their bedroom, and it's a medium that goes well with just talking gently to people. Okay, let's move on. We have two more stories, and Sahil, I told you from the beginning, I love your title. The title of the story is, it's a conversation that never happened. It's like a love story that never happened. It's kind of heartbreaking that the conversation did not happen, but I'm sure it's a good story. Now, you tellers, you have the option. You can look at us in gallery view.
Yeah.
Now there's about 7 or 8 of us with our cameras on. And if any of you who have your cameras off want to be more active in the scene, you could turn your camera on so Sahil could see you. Another option for the storyteller is to pin one participant and tell the story especially to the face of that one other person. So I think you all know how to pin people now if you want, right? You go to the upper left of that person's rectangle and you click on the 3 white dots. If you want to hide the people's rectangles, if they don't have the camera on, you go to that icon on the lower left next to the picture of the camera. You go to the upward arrow, video settings, and then you can, about 7 lines down, you can either hide or not hide the non-video people. That's the people who have their cameras turned off. If you hide the non-video people, you'll see the people who have their camera on much bigger. So that's probably a good idea if you want to be telling to people in the gallery view. It's probably good to to set it so that people who have their cameras turned off, their rectangles don't appear on the screen, so you can see the faces large of the people who are tuned in. Okay, Sahil, please proceed. Please introduce the story and yourself and tell us about a conversation that never happened. How frustrating.
Well, I hope this story can sort of live up to the hype. But yeah, I think this is an interesting one for me. So I'm going to sort of try something out today, which I'm really excited about actually. So this is a conversation that never happened, like the title. And fortunately, the title has a doomsday sort of effect to it. So it is going to be an incomplete sort of story. I am conflicted a little bit in terms of whether I should sort of give context, before I narrate the story and before I sort of perform the story in a certain sense or after. So I think I'm just going to take a risk and I'm going to give context after the story. What this conversation essentially is just a conversation with myself, right? And it's a conversation that I really wanted to have, that I really want to have. And, that never happened, right? So here goes. Hi, I would like to speak to you today. Well, finally, I think I'm ready to escape from the escapes that I have carefully created and cultivated to sit down and have this conversation with you. There might be distractions that will take me away, but I want you to bear and to sit with me. For without your active listening, I would find it very difficult to have this conversation with you. So here goes. I know I've been avoiding you for a while now. But you do understand why, right? I know that we have to have this conversation, and so I'm ready, and I'm ready to have this conversation with you right now. Tell me, what is it that we need to talk about today? Oh, that. Well, okay, we can talk about it, but can we talk about it slowly? Can we ease into it? Can we just be very slow and gentle with it? For if we're not, also it's something that happened so long ago. I mean, I was 9 years old, and do you even remember that incident, is my question. Now I'm going to begin to vaguely describe an incident to you by mixing up a couple of irrelevant facts, tossing them together, and you, my friend, are going to be convinced. Do you even remember that time? You were just a child, wanting a little bit of love. Do you remember? You found love in that special someone you were so attracted to. What else does a child want at that age? Do you remember that first kiss? Now I'm going to ask you if you remember that first kiss. Wasn't that first kiss meaningful? It was, it really was, and I know how meaningful that. Are you still here? I really want to have this conversation with you. I am. Would you like to start from where we left off? Yeah, it happened really, really long ago. I remember I was a child. I was 9 years old. It was a moment when I was in the car. We were on our way to this place. I remember looking out of the window. What is it that you, my friend, are looking for? Are you here for a reason? Now I'm going to point you in this direction of love and appreciation, where you're not going to feel the pain and the hurt of this ridiculous attempt that you seem to be making today. Do you remember when you were 10 years old? Do you remember how you sat down and entertained an entire group of people with your jokes and your beautiful smile? Look how everyone is appreciating you. Look how everyone likes you. I know, but I don't want to. I don't want to look there. I don't want to go there. I think it's important to have this conversation right now, and I really want to have this conversation right now in this moment. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? Your voice is fading, but I can hear you. I'm sorry. I'm just getting really distracted, and okay, I really want to have this conversation. Let's go there. I was in the car. We were in the car. I was looking out of the window, and you are a divine being. Now I'm gonna toss around words like divine and light and love, and I'm gonna say how beautiful your being is. You are a being that is filled with strength and with passion. You are Shiva. You are ruthless. You are strong. You look at every conflict with resilience. You don't know how beautiful the source of light within you is. You are an alchemist who can transmute your pain and everyone else. I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not that. I need to look. I need to have this conversation. I need to just be able to. I need to just be able to talk about it. And so I'm not that. Can you hear me? Can you please hear me? Your voice is fading, but I can hear you. And that's me.
Okay, that was very brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to sort of give a little bit of context.
Go ahead.
Yeah, to the story as well. So I think this is a conversation that this was a conversation between who I define as the wise one, inside of me, the sort of adult, mature self, that is willing to sort of engage, that is filled with love, that is filled with compassion, that is filled with understanding, who's really trying to have that conversation with that child inside of me that that wants to sort of go to a particular event and wants to go to a particular incident but is not able to. And that's the conversation that really sort of needs to be had in that sense. And in that, every time that sort of that me, who is the presenting self, who's here in front of you, tries to have that sort of conversation with that inner child, I meet certain characters within me. When I meet certain people, certain voices in that sense, who sort of prevent me from having that conversation. So the first voice that that we sort of looked at was who I refer to as the manipulator, the clever sort of deceiver. Who will very, very carefully, very cunningly manipulate me into believing that everything that I'm really sort of needing to address is invalid in some way, and will sort of steer me in another direction. Then the second character that we met was who I define as the protector. Who's this very commanding, very big voice inside of me, like a very strong sort of authority figure, and saying, why do you want to feel that? Let me sort of steer you in some other direction. So that's really that voice that's sort of protecting me from that pain and that hurt in that sense. And the third voice the third voice inside of me is the magician. Is that sort of is also like an enchantress in that sense. By feeding me stories about how divine I am, by feeding me stories about how I'm this beautiful being filled with light and with love, which I get extremely carried away with. I tend to sort of like ignore that part of me that needs sort of acknowledgement and addressing in that sense. So I think this was just those characters inside of me and those voices and how they sort of come up in my life. So yeah.
Great. Well, have you formally studied psychodrama?
No, I haven't.
What you're doing is what is done usually in psychodrama.
Yes. Yeah.
I think you would enjoy psychodrama.
I think so too.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that it was not easy for us to distinguish between the different characters.
Yeah.
We knew about the child, But I was upset that one of the characters talking to the child kept interrupting the child. At one point he said, "You're making a ridiculous attempt," when the child was talking about what happened in the car, and the child was trying to bring it up, and then that other voice just cut him off, saying, "What you're doing is ridiculous." So that was a little, I felt bad for the child, and it was frustrating that we didn't have a chance to hear more from the child because that other voice was cutting him off.
Yeah. So that's so in my conversations with my sort of child, I have a conversation with my child who's at different stages of his life. So there's a 14-year-old child inside of me as well, and every time that 14-year-old sort of child wants to have a conversation, there is an authority figure that prevents the child from having that conversation. There is a very that's been my personal experience.
Yeah, but we have to think about why is that authority figure preventing the conversation from really happening?
Yeah, I have gone into that, but that's, I think, for a different sort of forum.
I mean, is that authority figure trying to protect the child or trying to protect himself?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think? Who is that protector trying to protect?
Yeah, I think the protector thinks that he's protecting the child, and I think that's where the sort of conflict is, because the protector also sort of the protector believes that he's doing something for the child in that sense, but he's actually not. I would say that it's more about him than it is about but that's how the child has also internalized the role of that protector. So for a very long time, the child has felt that that protector is got his best interests, in his heart. So he's trying to sort of, and when he understands that, that it isn't about protecting the child, but it's just about him, then I think that's where the sort of, that's where the coming out again, in a certain sense.
Which character is it who comes to the child and says, "Let's talk. We really should talk about what happened long ago"? Who is saying to the child?
Yeah, that's the wise one. That's the sort of adult, mature understanding. I call him the wise one.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So these are, Carl Jung would call these different characters archetypes.
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
they are characters in your own imagination and maybe based on people you've known, but they are also universal figures.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the protector, in fact, is a Jung archetype. The defender, the protector.
Yeah, but your defender protector is a complicated character.
Is a complicated character.
He's angry about something, and he's trying to cover up something.
Yes, for sure.
Preventing the child from bringing something out in the open.
Absolutely.
So he's not a plain and regular protector.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, let's talk later.
Yeah, for sure.
I want you to do psychodrama. Are you a trainer? Well, what do you really do?
Well, I'm a sort of a bodywork, movement, and breathwork practitioner.
Yes, you should add psychodrama to your activities that the group of activities that you do on yourself, that you facilitate with others, because you're a natural for it. You have a talent and an interest in it.
Yes, yeah.
Great.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's all right. That's okay.
Anyone else want to say anything? This thing of having different characters within oneself. It's there was a movie called Inside Out that came out a few years ago. Yeah, you saw it, Sahil, and Sika, you also saw it. Where a girl's character, within her there was a joyous self and sad self, different parts of herself. So there's a long tradition of doing story work with aspects of oneself. Okay, shall we move on to the final? Yes, Pandian. You've got to turn your mic on, Pandian. You're on mute. Pandya Rajan, you're on. Yeah, go ahead. Somehow your voice is.
Presentation, the idea of the concept, the way it was presented was wonderful. It was a new approach to any type of storytelling that I have here. And now, what the problem is the clarity. See, clarity.
Clarity, yes.
The introduction that he gave at the end would have been given at the beginning. So,
okay, well, it's a work in progress. As it came out, there were at least 5 or 6 different characters in there.
Because he was silently sitting in one direction, I thought he's talking to one person, and I thought this side, and later, you see, I don't know which character was talking.
Yeah.
So the introduction that he gave at the end helped me to understand what he spoke, what he enacted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was the child who was dealing with, who was working through some sort of,
to understand that. But
let me just say, there was definitely the child who was the one who the others wanted to have the conversation with, or the others wanted that child to work through something. But those other characters had different approaches. One was more gentle, one was more rude. Yeah, it wasn't clear, but we can forgive that. More importantly, it was interesting. And it was explorational work, and clarity can come later.
No, Eric will love this way of presentation, I know. But the problem is, there was only one character at all. There is only one character in the whole story. That's what I understood at the end.
No, there was the child, and then there were the characters who were speaking to the child.
From within, the same person, different personalities of different.
Yes, well.
You call it mind, and then manas, and then buddhi, they call it. These two are the things. Manas and buddhi means the mind and the brain, you can say that, the intellect.
Yes.
So these two are basically interacting. And the mind, it goes through different stages of life. The intellect is watching it. So exactly this is what he is trying to put it. Look, he would have explained it in the beginning for the listeners to follow.
He's not so much in the explaining phase. He's in the explorational phase. He told us at the beginning this was not going to be a polished story with all the strings tied together. So that's, we need to appreciate it for what it was. Okay, let us proceed to our final story. Nageswara, are you ready? Please turn your mic on. Yes.
Namaste. Namaste.
And Vanakkam.
I am Nag. Vanakkam. I am Nag from Hyderabad. I am a teacher. So I have many stories in one story. That is my experiences in my field, teaching field. That's what Mr. Eric suggested me to share my experiences. So my school name is Sangamitra School, located in Hyderabad. So my management, my teachers, myself, and all children, we follow certain core values, rules, regulations, disciplines. So I wanted to share few of them, which everybody has to follow. Especially this pandemic brought so many changes in our lives, especially that we are connected to the environment, right? So what I mean to say is, cleanliness is next to godliness. This is a quotation. So many say, but they don't follow. So our school is spick and span. I'm not praising my own school like this. Everybody learn now because of the pandemic. Other countries are very clean, especially not in India. Why like this? People criticize, but they don't follow. Gandhiji, you might have heard about him in his birthplace, Porbandar. he has done a lot of seva in his place. So in our school, they don't throw the papers, dust, waste in the ground, in the campus. Wherever they find the dustbin, they go and throw, and they try to keep it neat and tidy. So all will help support staff, teachers, children, everybody follows the same rules. The moment if anybody see throwing, they go and complain to the higher authorities or the teacher, whomever they come across. So cleanliness is always important at home, at school, at workplace, everywhere. Secondly, responsibility. We should feel responsible for our deeds in the life, in the workplace, and everywhere. So we teach the children the responsibility. Example, timing. If they don't come on time, we make them sit at one corner for 10 to 15 minutes, no punishment. We write a small note to the parent that your child has come late to the school today. So try to send them on time, see that they wake up early, they go to bed early. If they come early, fine, they enjoy. Otherwise, they keep a sad face sitting in front of the particular lobby, closed space, surface, top surface will be there. So that day goes on for 10 to 15 minutes like that. Again, the story continues because they wake up late, they give trouble to the parents, so they don't learn. So our ultimate aim is to inculcate the timing value, punctuality value. That's it, right? In other school where I worked before, they used to close the doors when the assembly starts. When the teacher comes late, the principal comes late, they have to stand outside till the assembly completes. Then the gates will be open to come inside, but there will be no punishment. So the moment you give punishment, nobody likes to come to school. They don't love the school. These kind of feelings we should create amongst the students to feel responsible and to come up well in the life. If you go divert, because my experiences, my first batch students, one of them is working for the World Bank. The same boy, along with his friends, he ran away from the home, maybe some problem at home or in the school, we don't know. They tried to run away to Bombay to act in the movies and start working. Somehow we traced, we gave complaint, we brought them back safely. The same boy today is working for the World Bank. We feel very proud. So if he goes that way, I don't know what he would have become. We don't understand. We don't imagine also. So the storytelling also a kind of imagination. So we should involve when the people is explaining the story. So the people shared like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so many stories, all kind of feelings, action, navrasas, like anger, happiness, these kind of feelings we can see on the face, and we teach the children. We can't show the anger, but the moment you show anger, they try to imitate us. The parents, if they show, they'll try to imitate. Whomever they like, they try to imitate. Because after all, child is a child, right? If you go on teach so many morals, they don't follow. First you preach, then you teach. That is our motto. Next comes charity, helping others. In the month of October especially, because of pandemic, we thought of we cannot do, but we could do it somehow by managing. We collect rice, dal, books, stationery and all, and we donate to the poor people, whoever is needy, especially those are orphans and all those people. And we have donated 16,000 books to the government school where they have no books at all, no supply. And we are thinking of providing gadgets because there are no online classes for them. Other people are enjoying online classes, especially private schools and international schools, all such schools. So our management is very good. I can praise a lot, but it looks selfish here. But the way they inculcate the values amongst the children is so awesome. And they don't punish the people, they give excuses, right? So that they change. they want to bring a change in the life of the child or a teacher or whoever the person is. If they don't change, they'll be removed. That is, ultimately, they have to go on there. These kind of values we can teach to the children in our daily life by following. First follow, then teach. So sir who expressed by different rules, just know the conversation just before me, it was nice. But the clarity, as you said, okay, maybe it depends upon the perception. One sees one way, the other sees in other way. The perception varies from person to person, right? So maybe, thank you for giving this opportunity. So to share, there are so many. Be polite. We should give respect to the elders, youngers. No bullying. Bullying is a lot of problematic in the schools, colleges, universities. People go to the extent level of committing suicide and all. But the moment they count 1 to 10 or take a decision, they start doing kind of thing. It would be nice, but that moment, how they react, how their heart feels, they try to do all kind of things. During this pandemic also, you might have heard the story of a girl, a boy, a person, elderly person, PhD, has no job. He went and committed suicide after getting married. So how the people, so we should teach such things when you come across not only the success stories, how to overcome the problems in the life.
Okay.
So
you've given us a wonderful kind of summary of school life. Now, what we need for storytelling is particular examples. Can you give us at least one example? You said we cannot show anger because they would imitate our anger. Can you give an example of one time in your career when the student did something really annoying and maybe you wanted to show some anger, but either you did or you did not? Or can you give an example of a child who was not polite and how did you deal with it? Or a child who was bullying and how did you deal with it? You see, we need anecdotes about a particular incident. Can you give us at least one?
yes, it happened. So one day, science madam was explaining the practical class demonstration for a class till 10 children. They were sitting on the floor, nice floor, clean floor in the science lab. She was explaining the boy, the name is Shiva. Still I remember the name. He distracted, he was talking and irritating the teacher. The teacher has lot of patience. She was not reacting, but responding, be silent, don't disturb. So it happened to me to visit that side. I entered the classroom, I observed. The moment I saw, you laugh at me because this man is saying about the anger and he couldn't control the anger, what he did. So what I did, you know, sir, I'm fearlessly sharing the experience, what I have done. I found a broomstick in the corner. I took the broomstick, I called the boy, I gave small beatings on the buttocks. Immediately, the whole class was quiet and I said, sorry, right? I am not supposed to beat you because you are distracting. I observed that you're distracting teacher not to explain the practical class in science. So later parent also came and complained to the management and I said, sorry, that's it. The boy later, he realized his mistake. Sorry, sir, for troubling the teacher and you. So that's how they realized the mistake. So that moment I showed my anger, that's all. But not severely punish, only how the reaction will be.
And he followed your example. You apologized and then he apologized.
Yes, later he apologized.
Yes, but if possible, we want even more detail about that incident. Can you tell us exactly what that student was saying or doing to irritate the teacher and distract the other students?
Yes, because he was charting others, he's pinching others, he's not allowing them to listen. He's distracting. Though he was close to the teacher, she could observe, but she's very polite, she's very, lenient, but the child was not listening. Up to the class 10 child, you can understand the age, 15 years, teenage, right? So girls were there, boys were there. It's a co-education school, co-education class, right? But the moment it was done, it's mistake, my mistake. 100% I agree. So I'm sorry, right? The same person was teaching him so not to behave like this by little punishment. That too with a broomstick means you can imagine. So I'm not supposed to do. Horrible it is in the point of view of the parents and the school. Similarly,
go ahead.
A boy was having a hole in the heart by birth. That boy was also misbehaved when I was teaching the class. So I didn't punish him, just I scolded him and sent him out. So later he also complained. So I don't know about the problem that he had. Later, after the parents came and complained, then I came to know, yes, this boy having some problem like this. The same boy, he is now in States, United States. Whenever he comes to school, he meet me and say, "Sir, how are you?" Because his sister's children are studying now. Not only his sister's children, many of our students' children are studying. That means the second generation, third generation also studying. So we are seeing three kinds of generations, three generations. So we are lucky, fortunate enough to be in the field that to passionate job that is called teaching.
Wonderful. All right, well, going forward, if you want to develop your storytelling, give particular anecdotes with the dialogue.
With the dialogue, yes.
With the not just your summary that the student was saying rude things. If it's possible, if you can repeat those rude things, we want to hear the rude things.
Yes.
We want to hear the actual dialogue. We don't want to hear the storyteller's summary when possible. We want to hear it from the horse's mouth, as the expression goes.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone? Any thoughts? All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing about your school and your teaching experience. It is a struggle sometimes with young people to help them to help them.
Yes. Not only that, we collect the waste, dry waste, every month, particular day, 27. They bring in the bags because the bags will be provided by ITC. There is a company. They segregate the waste and they recycle it. They reproduce the books again, and that will be used for good purpose. The money, whatever they give, we'll donate to the poor people. We call the blind, or we call visually challenged, or the other people, whoever needs the money will be donated to them. At the same time, we are helping the environment. Otherwise, land filling is taking place. It's a big problem afterwards. In a few years, we face a lot of problem. We have to buy oxygen. That kind of problems also come across in future. So that's the reason we thought we have shown them video how the land filling is taking place. A lot of waste is thrown, especially plastic. When we throw the plastic, the animals are eating. Little food is left over in it. They consume when the animals die. So when they cut open, they saw a cow, 16 kilos of plastic found in its stomach. So it's very horrible. So how to connect to the environment, that is very, very important. So this environment, what we did harm, has shown in the form of pandemic like this. So we have learned so many things from this. More rains, floods, fire, Australia, lot of trees burnt. Nobody did a good thing. Like, see, all the countries can unite, United Nations. They send so many helicopters. They can pour water and save the garden, the forest. These kind of things, somebody should take initiative and do good things. Good things will come back to you. Save dharma, dharma saves you. Do good and you'll get more good back. Thank you so much. I crossed the limit, I think, sorry.
That's okay. No, I'm very happy. We've completed the program only 5 minutes overtime. That's a big accomplishment for us. So thank you very much, Mayor. And thank you, Sahil, and thank you, Nageswara. So now I think we'll stop the recording for one thing.